And so you're always looking for that mentor who's a peer to help you, that's doing it and has just done it. And then a coach that is someone that is somewhat separated and not necessarily a peer, but someone that could look objectively. And then finding a mastermind and a group of people, like-minded people that not just meet up and have drinks, but meet up, have drinks, but talk about things that are very, very important and, solve problems and kind of go through those things together. So find a mastermind, find a mentor, find a coach, and it's not a commitment for life. It is just, that's where I am in life right now. I need a mentor, coach, and mastermind. And if you do that, you'll probably hit your full potential much sooner than you think.
This is the Yield Coach Show, episode 20. I am your host, Ian Brown, where every episode we bring you dynamic entrepreneurs, real estate investors, business leaders, and inspirational guests ready to open up, share their story, the good, the bad, the ugly, so you can learn lessons, gain advantages, and accelerate your success. A couple of housekeeping announcements. Yield Coach Capital is opening their doors to outside investors, and we plan to have offerings this year for accredited and potentially non-accredited investors. So please watch our Instagram, Facebook, and feel free to email me, ian@yield-coach.com, if you want to be added to our investor list. Our Employee to Entrepreneur video course is out. You can find that on our website. And for all you real estate agents, we have an inexpensive ebook, Agent to Investor, for agents that are eager to get into investing. All right, but enough of that. I'm very excited about today's guest. Today's guest is Omni Casey. Omni is a real estate investor. He's a broker. He's a coach for nearly 20 years. And he teaches people strategy for portfolio, retirement, strategic growth, seller financing, creative structures. He has 3 children. I think we might learn about them. His company is New Leaf Redevelopers, a real estate investing company. And he has recently published a book. We will learn more about that. I'm very excited. Omni, thanks for coming on the show.
Excited to be here. Thank you very much, Ian.
Wonderful. If you don't mind, just give us a little bit of background on yourself.
Yes, my story starts in Hawaii. I'm born and raised in Hawaii. My family's there, and about 20 years ago when I got into investing, that's where I was. Just before investing, I was kind of finding myself as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, and just kind of cycled through various businesses, whether it was a retail store at the mall that we opened up, or I had a surfboard flipping business, that I ran as well. And exactly. And so, that's what I was, kind of focusing on a few different things. And then just, real estate just found me, and I, realized that I love business. And so I wasn't drawn to real estate for the real estate aspect, but it's a really, really cool business. And so I got into it as a real estate investor. And then along the way, I became a real estate agent and broker as well. And I've been doing all of that for the last 20 plus years. I shifted away from Hawaii almost maybe 12 years ago now. My wife's was from Northern Virginia, just out of Washington, D.C. And we relocated to that area to be closer to her family. And it turns out that real estate is you can be very remote and do it. And so that allowed us the freedom to kind of move where our headquarters were. And we're here out in Northern Virginia now.
That's awesome. I'm what you would call a haole, I believe. I like to surf, but the surf report in Jacksonville, Florida is usually a knee high and pumping. And so it's a good longboard, paddleboard, old man board kind of environment. Flipping surfboards, I just have to ask. So you would just buy them at garage sales or Craigslist or Marketplace and put them in your shop, something like that?
Yeah, so I worked at a surf shop there in Haleiwa. Shout out to Surf and Sea, one of the biggest surf shops in the world, and has a really good surfboard salesman, and people would bring in things on consignment, and sometimes they just weren't up to par to what the owners wanted, and so I would say, hey, I'll buy that from you, and I put in the work to fix it up, and I was already there spending time, and while we kill time, we're out there cleaning off surfboards and fixing them up anyway, so I saw that as an opportunity to buy the inventory came to me. It was inventory that the shop didn't want, and I cleaned it up and was able to raise the value and sell it for a profit, and made some decent money that way. Eventually realized, I'm capped at a dollar amount in surfboards. So what is the next thing that I can increase in value? And that led me to obviously real estate.
That's awesome. As a little side note, I have 3 Donald Takayama surfboards in my garage. So
that's
yes.
beautiful.
So for the audience, and correct me if I'm wrong, but legendary Hawaiian surfboard shaper.
Yes, absolutely. Very multiple shapes. From shortboard to longboard, he puts out a beautiful product.
When I say that, I feel like it suggests that I'm a good surfer, but I want to dispel that myth. I am at best an intermediate at best. Maybe 10 years ago I was intermediate.
Sure.
Now I'm just old. Okay. All right. Well, let's jump in. I agree. It's funny when you meet people. I say funny. I find it interesting when you meet people that were like hustling in the different avenues they could at a young age. Like you had access to consignment surfboards or inventory. You could clean them up, mark them up, sell them. And, for me, I was in Washington State when I was younger, and there was a pretty good private recycling program. There was a public one too, but I could go grab everybody's cans and take them to with my dad. I didn't drive back then. Crush them up, bag them up, take them, and I'd get like $20 for like a garbage bag of crushed up cans. So I would like go door to door and ask if I could like sort out their recycling and grab like. I'm like, a young kid covered in like old beer. But, the fact that, you were doing surfboards, I was doing cans or whatever, or yards or shoveling snow when I was up in Washington State. Some people just kind of have that, that hustle muscle, and they just like finding margins and going for it.
100%. I think, people come to me, say, where do you start? I like talking about that because I think everyone needs to start with some level of hustle. You have to have hustle first. You have to try something, build that muscle, because everything becomes a hustle in terms of you got to figure it out, and not everything's going to work. And then you're going to figure out a different way to get it done through trial and error. And eventually, once you start your own business or get into real estate, that's the way to go.
100% agree. And you were smart, as was I, to move into a higher value asset class like real estate. So we're both brokers, and I don't broker full time. I don't know if you do, but like a lot of us that are investment brokers, if we have success, we might move into just our own deals. I helped a lot of people make a lot of money, and I still do help people make money in brokerage. However, if there's something really investable, now what I'd prefer to do is buy it, and if it's a large project, bring in outside investors or friends and family and essentially share the big pot instead of just grabbing a fee and moving on to the next thing. So also, you probably know from, and again, I don't want to poo-poo brokerage because it's been very good to me, but every time you leave that closing room, yeah, you scored a touchdown, but you've got to go out there, lace up, and do it all again. There's no residual. You got to go score another touchdown the minute you leave that closing room. And that can be a little exhausting. All right, well, let's jump a little bit into like how you moved into real estate and kind of like your strategy. Where'd you get started? What was your first, real estate endeavor, and where'd you go from there?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm to your point of, being a broker, or being an agent, or being an investor, 100%. I'm an investor first, have always been. I became an agent and eventually a broker out of necessity. Like there wasn't anyone that I could find that could help me as an investor and knew how to help me as an investor the way I wanted. So I got my license to kind of remove the barrier of access to information. And the book that I wrote, The Cash Flow Breakfast Club, actually tells exactly that story. So it is my story as an investor / agent in a parable format. But it kind of goes through the trials and error, right? As an agent, that there are struggles that we deal with, and you're exactly right. At some point, there's some frustration and there's some burnout that, what was the point of that? It's just like I put being a real estate agent and a house flipper in a very similar category. It's active income, and it's beautiful. You make really good active income, and I made a lot of money as an agent and as a house flipper, but there's nothing sustainable about that. There's going to be burnout at some point. You need that passive residual income. And so that allowed me to focus and shift into rental properties as my primary focus on the investing side. I still flip properties every once in a while. If the deal doesn't make sense to keep, then I'll do that. But by far, the vast majority of properties I try to pick up are rental properties. They started in Hawaii as just small condos, and those small condos were still very expensive almost 20 years ago. and I had to learn how to shift off island and, find markets that cash flowed better than Hawaii did. And I that taught me the discipline of finding the right team, finding the right agent, finding the right property manager, and finding the right location, and investing really in them. You find the market, you're comfortable with the market, but you're investing in that team, because without that team, no matter how good the deal is, your deal is going to be subpar. Your cash flow is going to be subpar if someone is not managing it correctly for you. And so finding that team has become the most important thing, and I've kind of refined that process, and it has helped me pay off throughout my career.
Okay, I'm going to go with a multifaceted response here. So first of all, I want to hear more about the Breakfast Club book you're putting out, and of course this team building, because it's a very hard journey to do alone, especially if you're going to be doing something like in the apartment world or the structured investment world. It's pretty hard to do alone. But first and foremost, what is with you Hawaiians? I feel like there's not that many of you, and you're everywhere, and you're ambitious, and you're bold, and you're doing all kinds of things. I don't know how many like native Hawaiians there actually are, but I feel like you're everywhere, and everything you're in. I dabble in jiu-jitsu. We talked about surfing. I'm in investing. I'm like from Kiyosaki to BJ Penn to people I see online. Like the Hawaiians are just crushing it. So is there what's going on out there? I thought you were just laid back surfers.
Probably not. Yeah, I would say that maybe we have an identity crisis, right? We are this small little speck in the middle of the ocean, and if we ever leave that, we're trying to make our mark, right? We're trying to feel maybe significant is probably the right word. But that being said, not everyone's as driven as anyone else, and the fact that I kind of went down this path. I will say most of my investing career, I was not public about it. It was just me and eventually me and my wife, and we're very, very private about it. And it wasn't until really a couple years ago that we publicly came out and started to share and coach and teach, primarily because of guilt. We just felt guilty for one. Maybe we weren't sharing because we were worried about what people will say, and we weren't there yet. And once we got there, we just like, well, we haven't told anyone this long. Let's just kind of continue on with, putting our head down and doing our thing. And then it got to a point of, man, friends, family, coworkers, agents that I'm coaching. I'm not teaching them the most important thing. Sure, I'm helping an agent learn how to make money as a real estate agent. But that's not that important. It's not as important as how to become financially free through passive income. And so kind of made that shift to add that to my coaching and my help along the way. And it's been rewarding ever since.
I totally agree. And even with my small brokerage outfit, I'm the broker of record, the leader of the pack. But we're small, but I don't have agents that don't also aspire to be investors. They might not be there yet, but they at least get it, have a hunger, and they know that it's not sustainable, like we said, to just be living on. I call it pop money. Like you can't see me if you're watching this or listening on Spotify, but I'm popping my hands like a cheerleader, And it's nice to have the pop money, but what I try to coach people to do is if you can take that pop money and drop it into a real asset, a cash flowing asset. Take a simple, like in commercial real estate, it wouldn't be uncommon to have 20, 30, 50. $100,000 commissions aren't super frequent, but you might get them. You might do better. If you're doing apartment brokerage, you certainly are going to be getting them. And so what I started to do is I'm going to botch this or paraphrase a little bit, but I remember selling a strip center, a retail center, like in 2015, 16. And it was a pretty good check. I want to say it was maybe 40 grand. And I was like, you know what? I could stick this in savings and like sip on it like hot tea and just have, float out, keep brokering and just feel a little more secure. Or I could pretend like I never got it, put it into a deal. And what I ended up doing actually was a flip, which is not my core. I went into a flip, and it was the perfect amount of money to rehab. So I did a fix and flip loan, 90% LTV, and I just ended up rehabbing with that money. Now I've learned I actually could have borrowed the rehab money, but hey, at least I started. And that was so critical. By not putting that money to the side, it just would have sat there. It just would have melted like an ice cube. Put it into an investment deal, flipped a property, and then I 1031, because the flip took me like a year. So I 1031 that into an 8-unit apartment. It was the perfect amount of equity. The profit on that was like 60 grand. It was perfect to go into this C-class, Section 8 kind of voucher filled 8-unit, and clean that up a little bit. Sold that, moved into another 28, 83, kept going. And so the critical, it doesn't really matter where I went after that, and I'm going to keep going. So are you. What really matters is money came in as a broker, and I didn't just stash it or spend it. I put it into an actual investment. And just by doing that, that was a critical pivot in my journey.
There's some huge things you said there. That's actually one of the core steps in the book, is hiding money from yourself. If you do not learn to hide money from yourself, it doesn't matter how much money you make, because you will always learn how to spend that money. We raise our level of our lifestyle to the level of the income that we bring. We start making $100,000 more per year. Guess what? We're going to start to spend another $100,000 more per year unless we intentionally try to hide that from ourselves. The brokerage that I run, this office, we have about just under 100 agents. And in the last few years, about 50 agents that I've hired. All of them, I now only hire agents that have the intention or goal to be an investor as well. And so every single one of my agents over the last few years have already been investors or are on the path to become investors. And that's one of the key things we talk about. Make money, treat real estate like a business, right? You're the business owner. You're going to make money, and there's going to be profit, and you're going to pay yourself a salary. Just live off of that salary, whatever that is. Your entry level, pay yourself an entry level salary, and then everything else over that is profit from your business. Hide it from yourself and go buy some real estate so that you could, have passive income along the way.
That's awesome. I didn't realize your company was so large, your brokerage staff. Congratulations. That's
Thanks.
I can respect that effort. Tell us a little more about this this Cash Flow Breakfast Club book you put out.
Yeah, it's something that I wrote probably 3 years ago, and it was more along the lines of, as I was starting to feel the guilt of not really sharing and teaching as much as I should on the investing side, I just kind of wrote down my journey, step 1, deal 2, deal 3, the progression, because if I was going to start coaching and teaching this, I just wanted to say, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? Right? I definitely did things right, and I definitely did things wrong, and what can be learned from that. So it became a manual for me, probably never really intended to put it out there. But I started to coach from that and teach from that. And then I was hesitant to kind of pull out my entire story as Omni. This last year, my wife actually helped me to convert the story, a lot of the same transactions, but we put it into a kind of fictional power parable format. So there happens to be this guy, his name's Dan. He grew up in Hawaii. He is an investor. He is a real estate agent. So it's very, very similar story. A lot of the very core, activities that happened in there, but it's easier for me to tell his story than my own. And basically just starts with going down the path and someone learning how to do exactly what we just talked about. Make some money. You got to get good at making money, but making money is not the most important thing. And then it's, step-by-step process for, setting aside the money, hiding it from yourself. How do you reduce your housing expenses? We talk about house hack options, and there's various options that I went through and helped people through to reduce their expenses down to zero or very close to zero. Because you think about it, if you'd say, hey, I have a goal to invest every year and I want to, invest $50,000 every single year, that's tough for your average American to say, I need to start earning or saving another $50,000 per year. Because most people are kind of, no matter how much you make, you're kind of right towards the end there. Where if you can figure out how to house hack, if you can figure out how to reduce your expenses for a short period of time, so let's say your living expenses were $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year, and for whatever reason you're able to reduce that down to zero. Now you don't have to change anything. You now have that $40,000, $50,000 to be able to invest because you were already spending that. So that really is a life hack more than anything. Now you can't sustain that forever. So that's usually a period of 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But if you can buy one new property that entire time, that 2, 3, 4, 5 years, that is cash flowing just from the housing expenses that you're able to put away, that could be life-changing in the trajectory of your passive income. And then it talks about reducing debt and a few other things down the road. And probably the most important focus, aha moment for me that took me years to learn, because one, I wanted to be financially free and I wanted to like leave a mark on the world. And I thought they were the same thing. Right. So my real estate investments were both for financial freedom and for generational wealth and legacy and things like that. And it was very tough because those are two different type of investment paths. And so it wasn't until I realized that I had to focus on financial freedom first forget about legacy, forget about generational wealth, forget about everything else. If I went the quickest path to financial freedom and get there first, and once I'm financially free, then I was able to focus on the generational wealth. Now I didn't have to worry about an income anymore. I can actually go put effort into things that were not paying me, but those are things that I'm passionate about that may pay off big down the road. And so separating your financial freedom from your legacy or generational wealth is kind of a key step in that process as well.
I love that, and I completely concur. Our Instagram account, if like in the past maybe 90 days, I've put out quite a bit of stuff on similar topics and like house hacking, and actually currently house hack. And I try to explain to people. So my wife doesn't want me to like do a walkthrough of our house. Anyways, she's like, I don't want everybody to see where we are, but I have done some images. But we have a 105-year-old historic house, corner lot, nice house. And it's an old part of the town. So many, like 100 years ago, it was built with it was probably for honestly horses, like just a little side access for like a horse garage. You wouldn't be able to park a car in it. It got enclosed, and at some point there was a psychiatrist seeing patients in there, and they plumbed a little bathroom, no shower. It's probably like 180 square feet, like 10 by 18, like a small hotel room. And I only wanted to buy this property. The property's like 3,300 feet. So it's less than 10% of the square footage, and it's around the corner. It's like, it's on the side. And I'm like, this is beautiful. I want to do a Murphy bed, a mini split, break the floor, do a shower, kitchenette, courtyard in front. And we did it. So I did all that stuff. And I think that conversion it was like maybe 17 grand, give or take. It might cost a little more today. Call it 20. That thing pays for, we do Airbnb, and we're like traveling nurses as well on Furnish Finder. That thing, we have like I said, a nice big house. That thing floats like 85% of our mortgage, depending on the month.
That's awesome.
And it's just, do I have to have it now? Well, no, not necessarily, but boy, is it nice, to free up $30,000, $40,000 a year. And like you said, that's enough to where like you might be able to do, depending on what part of the country you live in, you might be able to do another deal every year. Just because of that. Or like people will ask me like, okay, especially if they don't have maybe the bandwidth or the time or the attention to like really follow a lot of what we have to say, and they just want like that really quick life hack. I always bring up, like, if you're renting or living in a single family home, either of those, stop, go out, figure out how much you qualify for like an FHA, that 203 renovation loan, 203K. You don't have to renovate, but in my opinion, find a small multifamily with a 203K loan, get a broker who's your friend to kick back some brokerage, whatever you have to do, seller credits, play the game, get that house hack, get your housing completely off the table, ideally cash flow. And the other thing is, if you have a car payment and you're really trying to get in the game, swallow your pride, drive something you can pay for. $5,000 cars still run, and boom, there you go. You probably just pulled 40 grand, maybe 50 grand out of thin air by doing that. So I love this stuff. Then you don't have any excuses. If you can't get in the game with a newfound $50,000 a year, that's on you.
Yeah, 100%. Actually, the first chapter in the book, I think it was called Living Under a Bridge or something along those lines, because the beauty of what you just talked about, we talk about the real estate side, the house hack side. All you need to do is get rid of your expenses. Doesn't matter how you did. So I had a very short stint of homelessness growing up, and it was self-inflicted, and I had a van, and it was, I was okay, but I guess what? I had no expenses during that window, right? And so I'm not advocating anyone to be homeless. I'm not advocating anyone to go live under a bridge. But if you're living with your parents, if you're living with your kids, if you are, whatever it is, reducing your expenses, clearly owning your property as a house hack is the best option. And there are multiple tiers of ways to do that. But one of the examples, and something we do often, I personally have done multiple times and I help people. So let's say you're in your forever home and you don't want to move, or your spouse doesn't want to house hack, right? That happens all the time. So, all right, have you been in your property long enough, and has the equity gone up? Can you cash out refi that, which, is a terrible thing to think about, based on, what that did to played a factor into our economy years ago. But if you do that and do nothing but buy a cash flow property that supports itself and supports the debt of that property. Now that helps you offset it. So we have actually helped people who didn't want to or couldn't move from their home pull out enough equity because they were able to raise their rate because of timing. Lower the rate because of timing. They had almost a very similar payment to before, but now they had, let's say, $200,000 of money from this cash out. They put that out as a down payment on a fourplex somewhere, and that cash flow is supporting the fourplex, supporting the reserves, paying for a property manager, and paying for their mortgage on their main home. Right? So you need a really good deal to make that work. But even if it's a portion of that, you can house hack in a way by using your equity to go buy a property as long as the only intention is cash flow to support that debt. Anything else, right? Paying off debt, go buy a boat, that's all risky, right? The market, now you're stuck with a bigger mortgage. But if you're buying cash flow, that's the one, in my opinion, the more responsible thing to do with your equity.
Again, you're right on point. I completely agree. So I think the way you're coaching people is smart. We're in a rising rate environment, so it's a little tricky. But still, even in a rising rate environment, you probably have clients they have so much equity, they should either refi. They can do a HELOC. The HELOCs are floating for the most part, but I'll just speak for myself. I pulled a HELOC. Actually, we really haven't tapped it yet, but I just wanted to have it. With a local credit union, which is usually who does HELOC lines. And just to have, I think mine's 200, just to have 200 right there. It's even with floating 50 over LIBOR, I think my rate's because they don't move it exactly the minute the markets move. I think I'm 5.5 right now. Yeah. But it's a 20. I found a bank that does a 20-year AM, which is pretty good for HELOCs. A lot of them are 10, and the debt gets kind of pricey. But to your point, don't go pull the HELOC and buy the boat and the RV and the new car or whatever. And honestly, even some of the HELOC home improvements, be careful. Do home improvements that are going to actually move the needle. And what the best thing you could do is what you're suggesting, an entirely new asset purchase. I think that's really smart. And it sounds like you're putting a lot of clients maybe into 2 to 4 unit entry level investments. What's nice about that is they can get 30-year fixed loans. They don't have to worry about a capital event or a refi. I think early on, a lot of people are get me in an apartment deal. Well, if you're not already a purple belt or a brown belt or a black belt, you probably, if you're accredited, then throw that money in with an actual good sponsor. If you're not accredited, I would just start small. You don't need to be worrying about balloon payments or bullet loans. And I really like what you are coaching your people to do.
Yeah, I love that. And you're right. The residential focus. Now, I personally I don't help as many people. It's usually myself and my wife, but as a coach and broker of the office, all my agents and I kind of through them, coach clients, and we do push them to that 2 to 4 as much as possible for that 30-year debt. I will say the last 6 months that has been less important because one, the interest rates has been so high and the commercial, 5-unit or more interest rates have not actually gone up at the same rate. So you can find comparable loans, if not better loans on commercial in some locations. And any rate you get right now, you're probably going to want to refinance within the next 5 years. So it's not as important right now. But prior to the last 6 months, that's 100% what we talk about. How about buy a property that you never have to do anything with? If you want to do something and the market goes up, great. If the interest rates go down, great, you can do something. But can you buy a property in this current state and just rent it forever, never have to sell it? Because the moment you say this works, if I need to sell it in a year or 2 years or 3 years, that's a different type of investment. There's another layer of risk and crystal ball, access that you need to make that work. We've all benefited from the market going up for so long, and we don't know what's happening right now. We don't know what's going to happen, but if you had to sell at a gain, you just need to time the market, and that's a timing thing versus a set it and forget it passive income for life thing.
Yes, and it's the same reason why, in my opinion, if let's say you and I were going to go buy a 50 unit, but we'd never done it before. Maybe we'd own some rental houses, but we want to team up and buy a 50 unit. We probably shouldn't do some heavy turn bridge loan, and we got to refi in 12 to 36 months. Otherwise, all the investors are pissed and sue us and our reputation is burned. You don't want to get into these these capital events that you have to time things just right and then layer on renovation or CapEx schedules. It's just too much. What do you we talked a lot about getting started, and I think we're completely on the same page there. Cutting expenses it's really more tangible than raising your revenue. Everyone talks about Instagram's all about the side hustle, your ninth job, and blah blah blah, and drop shipping and this and that. And okay, if you want to, sure, go for it. But for me, what's really tangible? Don't eat out every day.
Yes.
Drop your car payment and house hack and suck it up. You can do that now. You don't have to create a whole new job for that. But you mentioned something earlier about scaling and teams. And if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind hearing your thoughts on that. I had a mentor early on. Now, I will say this was in the appraisal industry. That's where I started in commercial appraisal. He said, Ian, you want to be really big or really small? He's like, you don't want to get stuck in the middle. And he was talking about running appraisal shops, but you know what? It applies to brokerage, and it applies to a lot of things. So what are your thoughts on teams, growth, scaling?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And that really big or really small is relevant in most industries, and it does translate both to the agent and the investor side as well. I will say you can run an operation without the actual team through, assistants and things like that. But once you start having salaried employees under you, then that's where your overhead sometimes becomes too big just for your small operation. It's not how do I increase my business by 10% or 15% or 20% to get to that level. You're almost thinking, how do I double, triple, quadruple my business to make sense for the next 2-3 employees that I'm bringing on? And so, and sometimes that works in development. Sometimes just raising the value a little bit, there's not enough equity in the property for that to make sense. But if you completely redevelop it or you completely restructure it, which is going to cost you 3 times more, but that's where the profit is sometimes, right? So it is kind of being able to look at things from all angles. From the investing side, it has been, especially on the passive income where I focus on rental properties. It's been easier because you need a good real estate agent, right? I'm licensed in 5 states, but I'm never my own real estate agent. I always find an agent that is just an expert in what I'm looking to buy and do in that area. I usually have some sort of investor that I've connected with in the area. Actually, one of the tips that my mentor kind of passed on to me early on is when I'm trying to find a new market, I find an investor and I figure out, can I add value to that investor? Can I tag along on a deal? And it often meant, was I funding their deal? Was I becoming a private money lender for them? Because one, that gives me eyes on what they're doing. I get to test that market out with somewhat minimized risk because they're doing their own thing. And then if it's successful and if we like the market, then I might continue and do my own investment in that area. And then now I'm able to leverage their contacts to pick and choose who am I going to use from their team possibly to kind of grow my own team. But once you get beyond picking the market, you're looking at, a rock star real estate agent or broker, then a rock star property manager. And then usually between those two, they bring in everyone else in the team, but sometimes you're bringing your own contractors and things like that. You need your legal team, you need your accounting, but sometimes that's not regional. And everyone I spoke to there, those are all contractors. They're not employees. So it doesn't actually cost you anything. It's, when you're scaling your deal finding and scaling your process and you need assistance or virtual assistants, that's where the cost comes up, and it's not a contractor base, but it's a employee base, and I do leverage virtual assistants quite often.
So a couple things there. So I do completely agree. If I've stayed very small, like a kind of a lone wolf maverick. Sam, the show producer, does media and general assistance for me, and she's wonderful. And then I have agents that are, 1099 traditional structure. And most of them, 2 of them are actually also attorneys. I'm an attorney. I didn't blast that out earlier, but attorney, broker, appraiser in Florida. And what I really do now is I do a little bit of each of that, but I'm mostly an investor. And I've been investing pretty aggressively for 6-7 years. It's, for a lot of us, you didn't have to be like a kick-ass investor from 2012 until a year ago. You could just probably buy something off of MLS or LoopNet, wait a few years, and make a big payday. I mean, a 6-figure payday, easy. So, and if you were doing apartments, good God. But what I wanted to talk about was these people coming to you, they want to, or say they come to me, come to you, they want to get involved. Knowing what does this person need, like taking the time, if this is somebody you want to learn from and be around for an extended period of time and grow from, you need to like take time to analyze that person and think about what do they need, like what are their shortcomings. Like if you spent any time around me, you'd be like, this guy needs, like he has to put out content, but he's really a real estate investor, and I don't love walking around with my phone in my face. And so I still put quite a bit of stuff out like on Instagram and things like that, and we're doing this show, obviously having a good time. But if somebody met me, I think they'd quickly realize like this guy probably needs like a videographer, like a little bit of help, like in content, like out in the field type content creation. And I would be like, sure, you can shadow me around. You can walk all these properties with me, shoot video, and I'll tell you everything I know along the way. But that's where my shortcoming is. And almost every entrepreneur has something where they need help. And I think when you're trying to get into an organization or find mentorship, they're like too self-interested. They need to think about the other person and what can they do, because you and I are both busy. And the truth be told, I won't speak for you. I'll speak for myself. I could do everything I'm doing with a staff of 0. And I mean no disrespect. I could just work from my house on the existing investments I already have, find something new every year, maybe every couple years, life would be fine. But I enjoy working with others, and guys like you and I, we like personal development and growth and spreading the message. And so, but my point is think long and hard about the person you're speaking to and what do they need? How can I help them? How can we grow together? Because nobody, neither myself nor you, we don't want to be pulled down. And tell me about VAs, because I haven't used them. I see a lot of like solicitation online or on social media about like real estate and VAs. Can you just speak high level about what you like about them? Should we be using them?
Yeah, I think the VA market has progressed substantially in the last 2-3 years alone, especially during the pandemic. There were tasks that you realize, actually, I don't need to be there in person. I could automate that. And if I could automate that, can I pay someone $10 an hour to do that? Is that a $10 an hour task? When I'm coaching, real estate agents, I'm like, there's a CEO mindset coach that I always try to put out there. There's $1,000 an hour tasks, there's $100 an hour tasks, and there's $10 an hour tasks. Segment in it, right? And if you find yourself doing $10 an hour tasks, all right, there's nothing wrong with that. You might like that. It might be cathartic, but it's bad for your business. So if you're doing a lot of that, you need to offload that to an assistant or virtual assistant of some sort. And there's many companies out there that help you find assistants, so you don't actually need to hire them. The assistant hiring process was difficult before, because now I need to be an employer, right? I need to be an employer. I need to vet someone. I'm talking about, need to know employer laws. But now you're just taking them as a 1099 contractor from their employer. It's almost like temp work, and you're paying their employer. They're worrying about the taxes. They're worrying about the legalities of that, and you are just getting there and getting an assistant, for the time frame. And often you can do, 10 hours a week. You can do 40 hours a week and decide what you need. Now, really, it's the first thing before you hire an assistant is you do a self-audit of what you're doing and exactly what we talked about. What are your $10 an hour tasks? What are your $100 an hour tasks? And what's your $1,000 an hour tasks? And how do you do more $1,000 an hour tasks and a few more $100 an hour tasks and get rid of everything else? You make a list, and then you say, all right, is there someone that can fill this role, that can take away all these $10 an hour tasks? And if there's enough, then that's where you decide to make your decision.
I love that. And I'm going to linger on this VA thing just a little bit longer. And for the audience, VA is virtual assistant. Many of them are, they're from all over. Some are from the Philippines. I've heard about some from Egypt. But English as a second language, but good English-speaking virtual assistants. What do you like, Omni, for your virtual assistants to do? Or what would you coach someone that's looking to maybe bring on a VA? What tasks? I know you got to do the self-audit, but what are some common things that you might have a VA do?
Sure. Starting out, a lot of it was some of the things that I knew I needed to do, but maybe it didn't need to be me. And so some of it was follow up. Some of it was, email management and database. Some of it was when I was doing direct mail, helping to manage that, getting into design, right? Outsource design. Now a lot, what I use them for is for website management, database management, my newsletters and things like that. Things that I need to overview and provide input on, but I don't need to be doing. And so those are specialized, right? Because not every VA can go, create a very nice MailChimp newsletter for you. So you got to find someone that has that specialty or someone that can learn that specialty. But a lot of it is website management and even social media management for me. Because I still like to analyze my own deals. I still do that. I know some people that have offloaded deal analysis, to VAs and it's something that I might do at some point, but I just find a lot of joy in being able to analyze the deal. So I still take that on.
I think there's a split on this, or I'll say I'm kind of split on one of these tasks, and that is the good old-fashioned prospecting cold call, which is, oh my God, it can be so painful. But when I first got into brokerage, I went into it was commercial, but I went into CoStar and I did a data export into Excel they have a true owner tab. Anyways, export that. This is over 10 years ago. So the technology is a little better. And what I did is I had my spreadsheet and I was just committed to calling 20 of them a day, introducing myself, kind of filling out their property contact information, send them comps, try to make a friend and stay on their radar as a deal maker in the future, whether they ever want to sell or what are you looking to buy if you're looking to grow. Just get a conversation going. Don't try and sell them on that first call, and send them some kind of a digital present, like an email with comps later or a market report. And it went really well. And I had a $5 million bank-owned hotel under contract early on. I sold another $4 million hotel. I had a good, right out of the gates, a good year. And I feel like it's because I just sucked it up, poured another cup of coffee, and worked through my prospecting. But I feel like the culture today is outsource all that. That's low-level work. And I'm torn on that because I don't know if it's my pride or my track record or some combination thereof. Could I give that to someone else? Even if they're not a VA, maybe they're a domestic American, maybe they even sound like me. I feel like there's something about saying I instead of my company, I would like to buy your property. I would like to meet you. I have other properties like yours. I would like to grow my portfolio. There's something about the authenticity of being the primary mover on the call. And I debate, should I spend an hour every day making those calls, or should I just offshoot it? Because it's been good to me. And I wrestle with a lot of people do outsource that. They do the mail, they do a VA, and whatever filters through all those finally gets to them and it gets scheduled on their calendar. Then they finally take a call that's already teed up. And maybe that's what I should be doing. I would be curious what you think about that.
Yeah, and I've seen both sides of that, and you're exactly right. When you are good at building relationships over the phone, and I know you probably are, that is a skill that is hard to translate through a VA or even any sort of assistant. Now, a team member under you, maybe that's a little bit different. They can absolutely probably do that. I've had VAs because one, it's a relationship and it's a multiple step relationship often in most of the big deals, and I need to be the one having that relationship in most scenarios. So what I've used VAs for is to find the low hanging fruit for me, and they're like, hey, my boss, or my partner, whatever the dialogue is, it wants to hop on a quick call, with you. And he really was hoping to chat with you today, but I'm calling on his behalf. Can I set up an appointment? And so it is trying to set up, not to build a relationship, but tee up me to actually have that call. And so instead of me spending, 2 hours, trying to just get someone on the phone and find someone that is willing to have a conversation, I can pay someone to have those 2 hours. And then now I'm only spending my time on the $1,000 an hour task, which is me actually building that relationship and maybe converting that into a deal.
And I appreciate you allowing me to linger on this topic. I just think it's so critical. Culturally, we like to, the CEO mindset is important, but there is still some work to be done by the entrepreneur. And I appreciate you going into that a little more in depth. All right, we're going to pivot a little bit here, and in your bio, you talked about your 3 children, involving them in your operations. I think a lot of us, so I'm 40 with 3 children. I have one that's about to be 17 and one about to be 2 and then 4. And I wrestle with, they're already going through traditional education, and I believe they will go to college and maybe beyond. But we both know that education is not going to give them the insights and the skill set that we have on this show, on this call. So what are you doing to kind of involve your children and more than just pass down generational wealth, pass down generational skill sets?
Yeah, it's such an important topic, and I wish we could spend hours just on this topic. I'm passionate about it. I got 3 kids, 13, 9, and 7. And I think the conversation of financial freedom is very important. And within our household, we've done a decent job of trying to talk about it, because like most families, you just don't talk about money, right? It's just an awkward thing to talk about. And I didn't talk about it growing up. I came from a very entrepreneurial family, but still the money conversation was awkward. And so want them to be comfortable with that. So we do talk about it quite often. We pull out P&Ls of our businesses and P&Ls of rental properties. We actually assign properties to them, so they have properties in their name that they've earned equity in. So that it's like they're tracking the progress of certain rental properties. And then there's the game, the Cash Flow Breakfast Club. The Cash Flow board game by Robert Kiyosaki. And we play that. We try to play that, once a week or every other week or so. And they learn the principle. So they're comfortable with that. But when I moved here to Northern Virginia, we weren't investing a lot in this area, because it was remote investing. And I love the fact I can invest somewhere that I'm not there and I don't need to be hands-on. I just got to hire the right team. But what that led to for me was just things to talk about on paper, but there is no hands-on learning for them. And so specifically for the reason of getting them more involved, I found markets in this area to try and invest in more. And so over the last 4 or 5 years or so, where I am, Northern Virginia, Maryland, DC, pockets, we've heavily invested in and shifted in this area, not because it's the best place to invest. There are decent places to invest. You can make anywhere work if you have the right team and you buy smart. But it really was so that it was close enough that I can drive by, take them to, let them punch a hole in the wall before the construction crew shows up, and they get it in their blood. They get it it's an experience, right? They remember it. And so every single weekend, just about, they're out checking on a project with me, checking on a deal that we're under contract with, or a deal that we're thinking about buying. I have them give me their opinion. Should we make an offer on this? And so, go through the scenarios. Here's what I think the profit would be, or here's what I think the cash flow would be. What do you think the right offer would be, right? And so they're all at different ages and they have different abilities to answer that question, but trying to get them to think critically on just making your money work for you and owning assets. And I'm not obsessed with them actually all becoming real estate investors, lifelong real estate investors. That's not my goal. I mean, my daughter wants to be a ballerina. Growing up, she can be a ballerina. If my son wants to, work in IT, he can work in IT. But I know no matter what they choose, financially, it's a tough path to do anything unless you have that financial freedom backing. And the one thing I don't want to do as a parent is to provide just a financial legacy. My goal is to pass on nothing to them. My goal is to pass on no properties, no money, give it all away. But they have the financial education to build it all from their ground up. And hopefully before they even need it, they have a portfolio. And so they do understand the importance. They do know that they're not inheriting anything. And so we have games and quizzes and conversations almost every single week specifically about their financial education.
It's interesting. So you've already told them they're getting nothing.
Yes. Many times.
Right. You're brutal, Omni. But no, I understand the logic in that. Even like Warren Buffett now, of course, he's still leaving them like millions, but not billions. I mean, I think it's not all for us. And if you have a social good you want to accomplish with your money, I applaud that. Brandon Turner from Bigger Pockets, he tells the story a lot about buying a quad for one of his kids. Rosie, and okay, so you know the story. And a lot of us have heard it if you've been following that show. But I thought about that, maybe as a way to get the kids involved. Is like you said, sounds like you've already done it. But I have a coming up on 2 and 4-year-old. I'm like, and I don't want to let Chloe, the 17-year-old, like miss out on the fun. She's just a little bit older to get that the quad. But the little ones, like I could put it on a 15-year or do the math to where when they hit 18, 19, going into college, just have it amortize on that schedule, and then they can live on the cash. They can they do whatever. It can go towards college. They could sell it. I'd obviously have some override if they were going to do something silly with it, but it would get them in the game, and I think it makes it hands-on and tangible, and they would never forget that. Wonderful. All right. Well, as we kind of come up against the typical duration of this show, is there anything else you'd like this audience to know? I definitely want you to tell everybody, where people can find you, but in the sake of time, anything else on your mind, Omni?
Yeah, I appreciate that. There's a lot of tips that I kind of give people and people ask, but we talked about a few things, mentors and finding the right mentors, finding the right teams. I kind of classify, if I'm starting out and what do I need to really hit my full potential, I think everyone needs 3 things, not just a mentor. They need a coach, and they actually need a mastermind, right? And so those are 3 different things, because often people come to me and say, can you be my mentor or can you be my coach? And it's different, right? And so understanding the difference and researching the difference of what does a coach do for me? I have a coach. I have multiple coaches. I have mentors, and I've had multiple mentors, and they've changed throughout my progression as both a business owner, a real estate investor, and a real estate agent and broker. And so you're always looking for that mentor who's a peer to help you, that's doing it and has just done it. And then a coach that is someone that is somewhat separated and not necessarily a peer, but someone that could look objectively. And then finding a mastermind and a group of people, like-minded people that not just meet up and have drinks, but meet up, have drinks, but talk about things that are very, very important, and solve problems and kind of go through those things together. So find a mastermind, find a mentor, find a coach, and it's not a commitment for life. It is just, that's where I am in life right now. I need a mentor, coach, and mastermind, and if you do that, you'll probably hit your full potential much sooner than you think. As far as the book, we talk about that concept in the book as well. It's called the Cashflow Breakfast Club. It's on my website, omnitheinvestorguy.com. You can find it on Amazon. I think the audiobook is dropping this week as well. So it's in print, ebook, and audio, as well. So it tells my story in a kind of parable format, but it really is a handbook of what I did to become financially free by the age of 30 is really what my target was. And then being able to shift and actually focus on generational wealth, focus on leaving a legacy after financial freedom.
And Omni, are you the narrator of your audiobook?
I thought about it. I just did not have the confidence to be able to do that. So I hired a professional. He did a great job. So yes, it's coming out with a professional voice.
All right. Well, you've got a great voice. You could have crushed it, but I understand. And I'll probably check your book out on audio. So much screen time between desktop and phones and devices. I've started to gravitate, as long as the content is digestible through audio, I've started to gravitate towards audible formats. I was actually have this podcast. We had a little bit of lag in between episodes. I actually caught COVID 3 weeks ago, and it knocked me down for like a week, and I was stuck in my room. No one could come see me. And so I downloaded Audible and I listened to Grant Cardone's 10X.
So good.
Yeah, and I was like, I think just the fact that like having Grant's voice like coming through the speaker in my room for whatever it was, like I think it's 7.5 hours of Cardone's voice. You're like, to hell with COVID, I can fly out of this room, I can run through this wall, like it's I think that the Audible, if people haven't tried that out, the audio format for certain books, and it sounds like yours with like a parable format might be good for that. So I look forward to digesting it. All right. Well, I encourage everybody to check out Omni's book as it comes out. And Omni, where can people find you? Are you on the YouTubes or Insta or Facebook or anything? Yeah,
Omni the Investor Guy is my handle just about everywhere, mainly Facebook and Instagram. I'm on TikTok against my will. My publisher said I got to be on TikTok apparently, so I'm not dancing yet, but I'm on there. Try to put out some free content. But my main website, omnitheinvestorguy.com, is probably the best.
Wonderful. Well, I've really enjoyed it, and thank you for your time. I hope the audience can have some big takeaways from this. You really dropped some good nuggets on us. All right, everybody. Well, as always, be sure to rate and subscribe to the show if you'd like to see more of it. We're on, everything, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes. This will be on YouTube if you want to see how handsome we are. And as always, we encourage you guys to interact with us. Shoot Omni a message, shoot me a DM or email or call. We like to hear from you, and it can help guide our content on where we go next. But for now, that is this Yield Coach Show wrapping up. This is Coach Brown signing off and reminding everybody to lace up and leave it all on the field. Yield Coach out.